Chapter 1: Abominations. The cold, hard stone beneath Amalia was the first sensation to greet her as she slowly regained her consciousness. She found herself laying on a damp floor of a dimly lit dungeon cell, musty with the smell of ancient stone and stale air. The only light source she could make sense of was a flickering torch in the corridor outside of her cell, wavering with a glow that cast eerie shadows upon the dungeon walls. Amalia pushed herself up into a sitting position, looking around and trying to make sense of how she had even gotten here to begin with, looking and listening for any clues of her current whereabouts. But no sights told her an exact location, and all she could hear was the sounds of water dripping off in the distance, echoing in the area, and the scurrying of what could either be mice or rats. Amalia's mind continued to wander and race as she did her best to recall why she was in the cell, but all she could remember was being out for her first hunting mission, and then the world went dark. Amalia checked for anything that could have been left over, such as her sword, shield, or perhaps even some food or coins, but every item she had was gone. After a short while, Amalia got an idea. She inspected the iron bars for any keyhole she could potentially pick with her hairpin that was still left on her persons. After a few failed attempts, Amalia finally heard a click sound. It was sharp and metallic, allowing for the rusted mechanism to yield to her unwavering persistence. Amalia held her breath, listening intently for the sound of an approaching guard, but the only sound still lingering was the echo of dripping water from elsewhere in the facility. Carefully, slowly, and deliberately, Amalia eased open the heavy iron door. Initially, due to the rust settled, it protested in defiance to open. As Amalia finally got the door to begin opening, she froze to listen again for any sign or response from the hallway beyond, but the corridor remained empty and unnervingly silent, remaining still illuminated by the same flickering torch from before. Amalia finally stepped outside of the cramped, dark, and damp cell to look around more. She saw that to her left there were a set of crude stairs leading upwards into deeper shadows, which could promise an exit, but likely meant running into whoever or whatever had imprisoned her in the first place. To her right there were more cells, all of them empty besides one. In that cell sat a figure partially obscured by the darkness. A silent, huddled figure slumped against the back wall. Amalia cautiously approached the other cell, her boots barely making a sound on the uneven and damp stone of the dungeon floor. Looking to the figure and asking, "Hey, are you okay?" The darkness and oppression of the dungeon begins to loom ever more present as she finally makes her way to the bars of the stranger's cell. The stranger, upon hearing Amalia's voice calling out to them, begins to slowly stir. With his head now upwards, Amalia can make out that this man is gaunt and weary. The man is dressed in rags that hang loosely off his small frame, and he wears a rusted iron collar that has been heavily locked around his neck, symbolizing his prisoner status. The man is not merely in a cell such as she was. This man is also chained to the back of the wall, and he has clearly been here for some time. The man's eyes struggle to focus on Amalia in the dim light, but widen slightly in exasperated weariness as they meet Amalia's figure outside their cell. The man coughs before, in a strained voice, finally answering, Are you real? Or am I finally losing my mind to this wretched place?" The man shifts, pulling his chains tight as he moves forward as if to make sure Amalia truly is a real person on the other side, just beyond the confines of his cell. The man looks confused. "Who are you to be walking free whilst I remain here? Have you sided with the darkness?" Amalia looks confused at the thought of siding with the darkness. Her entire life, she has devoted her soul purely to the light as a paladin of the Dithel clan. As such, she responds, "I'm Amalia. Amalia Dithel. I was on my first monster hunting quest, and I think I got knocked out from behind. One moment, I was eyeing some goblins down from across the tree-line. The next, I felt something hard in my head. Everything went dark, and I woke up in here. By the looks of it, I'd soon too be chained, but I managed to lockpick my way out of my cell." Amalia pauses. "If I might ask, who are you, sir?" The man lets out a dry laugh that eventually turns into a coughing fit. When he is finally able to compose himself, he looks to Amalia with a mixture of relief and guarded hope, saying, "Amalia, well, Amalia, you've done something I thought forever impossible." The man leans forward to the absolute limits of what his chains allow, with the dim light capturing the desperation in his hallowed features from lack of nutrition, clearly being starved by whatever or whoever has been keeping him captive. He sighs, "I am Trevor. I was a cartographer, mapping these forgotten tunnels, until they took me." Trevor glances nervously down the dark corridor, lowering his voice to almost a whisper. "If you truly have the means to bypass these locks, you must leave this place at once." The jailer, a wretched creature that almost seems to feed on the fear and despair of others, patrols these halls every hour on the hour. They will be back soon, very soon, and if they notice you've escaped your cell... Trevor looks Amalia in the eyes with a desperate plea. "But if you are truly leaving, I beg you to help me. If you open my cell, I promise with every fiber of my being that I will guide you out to safety." Amalia, after a few seconds of contemplation, decides to free Trevor from his cell, but as she looks at his cell's lock, she notices that it appears to be more complex than hers was. Amalia looks to Trevor with an apologetic face. "The lock looks different than mine, but I'll give it my best shot." As Amalia proceeds to insert the hairpin into Trevor's complex lock, she twists and probes it with care, but the mechanism is far more intricate than the one from her own cell she was placed inside earlier. The hairpin began to grind against the metal, catching on something deep inside of the lock. Perhaps it was an anti-picking mechanism, but whatever it was, it had bent Amalia's hairpin at an awkward angle, rendering it completely useless. Amalia pulled back with frustration, biting at her composure as the heavy door remained closed in place with no other way to open it and secure herself a way out of this dreaded place. Trevor, watching Amalia's efforts, slumps his shoulders as the reality of his situation sets in, and he whispers to Amalia, "It's no use," his voice trembling with a mixture of resignation and fear. He continues, "That lock is reinforced, young paladin. It was designed to keep me here, not to let me out." Just as he speaks, a guttural, wet, dragging sound echoes from down the corridor, the sound of something heavy being pulled along the stone floor. It's coming from the direction of the stairs. Amalia already feels in her gut that the jailer has returned. Amalia frantically searches around the room for anything that can be used to defend herself, and to her sheer absolute luck, there in a corner was her knight's longsword given to her by her father Puego Dithel. Armed now, and holding a chance to protect herself, Amalia turned to a defensive stance, ready for whatever the jailer might be, or might do. As Amalia pivoted, her boots scraping against the cold, uneven stone, adopted a low, defensive stance. She drew her knight's longsword, inherited through countless members of the Dithel clan, and locked her gaze on the darkness of the corridor, listening to the cold, yet horrifically rhythmic, wet scraping sounds that only grew louder with every passing second. Out of the darkness, eventually making it to the visible light of the flickering torch of the corridor, emerged a figure. It was a hulking, unnatural being. Clad in stained leather, its face was obscured by a rusted metal mask fixed in an eternal jagged grin, as if it had been waiting for any excuse to see battle with either her or Trevor, and she just gave it the excuse it needed to turn violent. In one hand, it was dragging a heavy, serrated iron cleaver, strong and jagged enough to leave deep gouges in the stone floor. The jailer paused, tilting its head towards Amalia, and a wheezing sound escaped its lips from behind the mask as it raised its weapon and took an offensive stance, signaling it was not going to let Amalia get out of here alive, unless she could muster up enough courage and skill to take it out. Amalia rushed forward with her longsword now in her hands again, and struck at the jailer. The jailer, while able to parry the first blow, was unable to parry or dodge Amalia's follow-up strike, as her longsword bit deep within the jailer's side, drawing a grunt of pain as it staggered back to catch its bearings. Amalia was already breathing heavily after that strike, her fear coming through when she saw the jailer was some kind of creature with protruding bones. The jailer, though injured, took advantage of Amalia's lapse in concentration to swing its cleaver at her neck, but Amalia ducked with great dexterity, having the blade of the cleaver slam instead into the stone wall, showering sparks overhead. While the jailer was pulling his sword out from the stone wall, Amalia seized the opportunity to perform an overhead strike, aiming for the jailer's skull. While her attack did manage to hit the jailer, He moved at the last second, and her blade instead bit deep into his shoulder. The jailer, now with his cleaver freed and anger building up inside of him, lets go of his side and swings at Amalia. She dodges the first strike and parries the second, but the third strike in the jailer's desperate counterattack hits. The jailer swung his cleaver in a desperate, horizontal arc, which grazed Amalia's shoulder enough to make her scream out in pain as she went to dodge the attack. Bleeding and knowing she could die if she doesn't take the jailer out, Amalia rushes forward through his next attack, ducking and re-emerging upright with her blade finding its mark and piercing through the chest of the jailer, catching him in the heart. As Amalia pulls her sword out of the jailer's chest, his body goes limp and he falls to the floor, lifeless in seconds. Seeing the jailer is no longer a threat, Amalia rummages around his body and hopes that he is the key to Trevor's cell. After searching, she finds a key on the jailer and rushes over to Trevor's cell, clutching her shoulder with her free hand. The heavy iron key yields the lock with a loud clicking sound, and the door opens slightly, enough that Amalia pushes it the rest of the way. Amalia uses the other keys from the jailer to release Trevor from his chains, but the iron around his neck is unable to be removed. None of the keys were able to rid it. Trevor looks to Amalia in amazement and rises to step outside of his cell with stiff movements, his legs trembling, likely due to malnutrition. Trevor walks over and looks to the lifeless body of the jailer with a visible shiver running down his small frame. "By the gods, you actually did it," he whispered, as he stared at Amalia in both shock and awe. Trevor quickly shakes off the shock, however, with his survival instincts overriding the fear he's felt for God knows how long. "We cannot stay here, Amalia," he says with urgency filling his voice. "If there are more of those things in these halls, we're as good as dead." Trevor pauses and goes to where the jailer kept items from prisoners until he finds his map he'd made several years earlier of the landscapes surrounding the outside area. "I know these tunnels, at least the layout of the upper levels. The path to the surface is through the chamber above, but we have to move, and we must do so quietly without alerting any of these abominations of God." Amalia looks to Trevor. "Understood, but first let me take care of this. I'm from the Dithel clan, and we've been divinely blessed with the power to heal the living." As Amalia places her hand on her shoulder and closes her eyes, she focuses her energy to heal her shoulder. Suddenly, a golden and warm light of divinity flows from her fingertips, weaving the skin back where it was slashed and knitting the torn flesh of her shoulder back together. In less than a minute, the sharp, stinging pain vanished as if it had simply never existed in the first place, leaving Amalia feeling revitalized and whole. Trevor watched the display with wide eyes, and a flicker of renewed awe crossed his face before he slowly began to nod, recognizing the strength and value Amalia held in their current predicament. "That is quite a gift you have, young paladin," said Trevor. "It will prove useful." Amalia looks to Trevor and lets out a slight chuckle. "Useful's one way to put it, but I prefer life-saving." Amalia immediately stows her long sword once again and prepares to venture towards the unknown perils of the upper levels that still loom. "So, where's the way out?" Amalia asks. Trevor responds, "Up those stairs." As Amalia looks towards the dark, winding stairs leading up, she can almost feel it beckoning them towards the surface. With a silent nod to Trevor, Amalia takes the lead on the ascent, with the air growing less oppressive with every step she took. As Amalia reached the top of the stairs, she began to hold perfectly still, letting the silence of the damp stairwell wash over, her ears straining against the darkness to pick apart the ambient sounds of the building. As she listened, she could still hear the distinct sound of water dropping, but as she listened more intently, she could clearly make out a metallic clink echoing from the floor above. Amalia looked to Trevor. "The path ahead has patrol units. It's not clear, and they're getting closer. We need to let them walk past us and take them out from behind, before they have a chance to even know what hit them." Amalia and Trevor hide in the small spaces around the stairs behind large pillars, listening as the heavy clinking of the iron boots grows deafeningly louder in the confined stairwell. Amalia's heart was pounding so hard that each step felt as though it were vibrating her very being. Trevor and Amalia held their breath, pressed tightly to the stone wall of the pillar when a figure rounded the corner, a guard clad in rusted chainmail with their face obscured by a helmet. The guard was carrying a lantern that was casting long shadows across the floor. The guard was scanning, clearly on a patrol route throughout the location. Amalia and Trevor simply had to wait. As the guard walked forward, he passed the pillar they were behind with his back exposed to them and began towards the stairs themselves. Amalia knew the second the guard found the jailer's body that he would call for backup and that they only had one chance to take down this behemoth. With the guard's attention fixed elsewhere, Amalia felt the cool hilt of her long sword in her grip. One clean strike could take him down right now before he could react in the slightest. Seizing her opportunity, Amalia lunged from the shadows, with her long sword arching towards the guard's neck with lethal precision. But just as the blade was about to slice through the gap between his armor and helmet, the guard sensed the shift within the air pressure and frantically threw himself forward, nearly falling down the stairs. Amalia's sword still managed to slash deeply across his armor, piercing it, but she could not tell if she struck with his flesh until the guard let out a howl of agony. As the guard turned around to face Amalia and Trevor, she drew her long sword once again and lunged for his throat, piercing her sword through. The guard, gurgling on his own blood, walked backwards a few steps, and his barely living form fell down the stairs to the room where they were held inside their respective cells. Amalia and Trevor wasted no time in waiting around to see if any more guards would cross their paths, finding a second set of stairs that lead them through one final hallway that lead to a heavy, iron-bound wooden door. With a strained push, Amalia and Trevor managed to push the door open as it let out a groan and stepped outside into the wilderness. Looking around, they could see woods, in the distance a road, but it was hard to tell exactly where they were in the darkness of the night. The transition, too, was jarring, with the oppressive, stale dampness of the dungeon giving way to the scent of pine, rich earth, and damp leaves. The trees were not making things easier, as they were making the moonlight struggle to pierce through their thick canopy above on the uneven forest floor. Trevor, exhausted from years of not even being able to walk freely, stumbled beside Amalia, inhaling deeply and almost frantically, not only as if he was tasting freedom for the first time in his entire life, but as if he had just run a marathon. His body was clearly just strong enough to keep him alive. Trevor was shaking. We're out," he whispered with a trembling voice before he composes himself. "But we have no supplies, and the creatures that put us there are likely to patrol these woods. The fact they're not outside feels like the luck of the gods themselves blessing us. Still, we need to find shelter, Amalia, and we need to find it soon." Amalia looks at her sword and sighs. "If we had an axe, we could have chopped down some wood to make us a small shelter for the night. But without one, I don't know if shelter's a luxury we'll get until we arrive to a town." Trevor nodded slowly, his gaze sweeping the darkened treeling. "You're right. Building a lean-to without tools in the dark is a recipe for disaster. If it ever fell, and we were trapped, those things would not hesitate to strike us down on the spot. As it stands, we are vulnerable." Trevor pulls out his map and points to a faint outline of a path winding through the trees. "I spent months mapping this region, Amalia. There should be a hunter's shack about a mile north, or at least there was, if it still stands. Though for tonight, it's our only real shot, as I would rather not take our chances in the open forest." As Amalia and Trevor move forward, Trevor gives one final look to the ominous stronghold entrance. Then finally, when he sees no guards are coming out after himself and Amalia, he looks forward to the woods ahead and begins to lead the way to the cabin, Amalia following close behind. As Amalia and Trevor walk through the woods in the distance, they hear a long howl pierce through the cold, dark night. Trevor looks to Amalia. "Whatever dwells in those tunnels might not be the only thing tracking us tonight. We move quickly and we move quietly, or we don't move at all." Trevor turned to look at Amalia, awaiting her decision on if she trusts his knowledge of the area and makes way silently towards the hunter's cabin, or if she wanted to find a secluded space to hide until the first sun rays of dawn met their gaze. After a few seconds of consideration, Amalia looks to Trevor with a newfound determination and says, "All right, sounds like a plan. Let's just hope the hunter at the shack is accommodating." With the decision made, and Amalia trusting Trevor's knowledge of the area, the two of them set off along the faint, overgrown path winding north through the dense foliage of the woodlands. The journey feels arduous, with the dark of the night making every shadow appear hostile, the uneven ground slick with tangled roots and decaying leaves, making sounds that could give away their location at a moment's notice, and every snapping twig and shifting branch making Amalia want to reach for her long sword, her senses of danger becoming more heightened as the travel continues. Trevor sticks close to Amalia. With his weakened state, his breathing is ragged, but he is determined to push through to the cabin he remembered noting down on his map. After what felt like an eternity of trekking through the dense foliage, in the clearing of the distance, the hunter's cabin finally began to reveal itself along the hillside. The cabin had seen better days. It was a small and dilapidated wooden shack. The windows were too dark to see through in the night, and the door was hanging slightly ajar, likely due to damaged hinges. Upon reaching the front of the cabin, there appeared to be no signs of life. There was no fire inside, and the grass was overgrown to where it almost reached Amalia's knees. Amalia slowly pushes the door open to look inside, and as the door groaned inwards, it revealed a cramped and dusty space that smelled of stale, rotting wood. Amalia's eyes adjust quickly, and she can see that the hunter's cabin is indeed empty, at least for now. As Amalia inspects the cabin, she sees a broken table in the middle, useless in its current state, and quickly notices that nobody has been here for months, perhaps even years, as a gray dust is coating everything. Amalia looks up to inspect the roof and notices that despite the state of the shack, the roof is actually intact just fine, so rain was no worry for the night. Trevor lets out a sigh of relief as he also scans the room. No hunter, he murmurs with a voice barely audible to Amalia. At least we have a roof over our heads. It's not much, but it's better than sleeping out in the open with those, whatever they are. Trevor sinks to the floor, utterly exhausted, whilst Amalia inspects the small space for any remaining supplies that could be hidden about. After a while, Amalia is able to find 3 days' worth of food for her and Trevor. The food may just be hardtack, nuts, and other long-term foods rather than anything to shout about, but it would keep them alive for the next while. As Amalia and Trevor stay the night in the hunter's cabin, she decides to make small talk in the safety of the indoors. She spoke of how she is from the Dithel clan, hailing from the city of Silverlock, how her family is known for hunting monsters, but most of all, how she one day plans to be the most well-known monster hunter by one day taking down a dragon by herself. Trevor listened intently, with his weary eyes brightening with amusement as Amalia continues her ramblings. He leans back against the dust-covered wall and says, "The Dithels. I've heard the name mentioned in larger cities," whispered with a mix of fear and reverence. "Known for hunting the things that go bump in the night, likely why we got out of that stronghold, but going against a dragon?" Trevor chuckled softly with a tired sound. "That is a goal that would put any name in the annals of history. Granted you survived the attempt." Trevor sighs, "I spent my life charting the known world, Amalia, and I've seen things on the edges of maps that would make even a seasoned hunter pause. But you have spirit, more than most. Perhaps your ambition is exactly what you need to survive." As the quiet of the woods finally seems to settle, and the fear of being hunted diminishes for the time being, Amalia listens to the wind whistling through the cracks in the walls and asks Trevor, "So, what exactly were those creatures back there? I've never seen anything like them before, not even in my monster hunting books." Trevor's expression darkens, the flickering shadows in the shack making his face appear even deeper and darker, almost to where his face appears scarred. He leans forward slightly, looking to Amalia with absolute seriousness, and lets out with a low voice, "That is the question that kept me awake long before I was chained, Amalia. I have walked the length of this continent, from the bustling harbors to the lonely peaks, and I have never seen their likes in any bestiary." Trevor paused, looking to Amalia with a slightly mournful expression. They did not move like beasts. They moved with a rigid, hollow purpose. Trevor looked towards the doorway, as if expecting the creatures to arrive any moment, tracing patterns in the gloom. "I suspect they're not creatures at all, but abominations. Something dark and forgotten that has been stirred up in those depths. Something that does not obey the laws of nature. If your books do not contain them, it's because they have not been seen for an age. I fear we're not dealing with your typical monsters, but something much worse, darker." Amalia looks to Trevor, her expression going grim. What I don't like was how intelligent they seemed. They worked in order. They aren't like monsters who kill and move on. They have genuine structure to their actions. Amalia paused, sitting on the floor and putting 2 fingers to her forehead, and seeing as they kept you around as prisoner, they seemed to like keeping people as trophies. Trevor, upon hearing that he may have been thought of as a trophy, shivered and instinctively pulled his rags tighter around himself. You strike at the heart of my own terrors, Amalia. You are right, however. They did not just patrol, they were more organized. They held positions, and the thought of being a trophy. Trevor looked away, not able to meet Amalia's gaze. They wanted something from me. Not just labor, but knowledge. They kept asking me questions about the ley lines, about their resonance of the earth in this region. If they're gathering intelligence, then our escape has likely put a target on both our backs, especially if they feel they have no more use for us. Trevor let out a long, shuddering breath, moving to the bed of the hunter's cabin and resting his bed as his exhaustion finally began to claim him. We cannot solve this tonight. At least I know I need rest. If they truly are as intelligent, or perhaps more intelligent than what we've already seen, then my fear is they will not stop searching even after dawn, where the light will force us to retreat to the shadows. Try to sleep, Amalia. Tomorrow, we must find a way to get word of this to someone capable of doing something about it. Amalia joins Trevor in the bed and says, all right then, tomorrow we'll get word out. I don't know where we are, but we can take a look at the map tomorrow. My name holds weight in Silverlock due to my lineage. If we're close enough, we can start there. My father, Commander Puego Dithel, should back us up. Trevor nods slowly, clearly relieved by the prospect of an organized force behind them. If your father is truly the man the legends say he is, Silverlock is indeed our best hope. Let us pray it isn't too far. With the plan set, the tension of the room finally begins to ease, replaced by the tiredness that only sleep could cure. As Amalia drifts off to sleep, she listens to the wind outside howling against the trees as a stark reminder of the danger lurking just beyond the walls of the hunter's cabin. However, inside where she is safe, the fire of her purpose aids her in finding rest, with the promise of tomorrow and the image of her father Puego guiding her to finally dream. As Amalia awakens, the gray light of the wood's canopy greets her, and she steps outside of the hunter's cabin. She takes Trevor's map with her to see just how far they truly are from Silverlock's gates, the morning sunlight bathing the old weathered map in a soft golden glow. As Amalia traces her fingers over the faded and jagged lines of ink, looking at the rivers, jagged mountain ridges, and marked trails, she begins to calculate the true distance, and a knot tightens. While she is not too far from Silverlock to search there first, it will be a travel lasting around 3 days in length. 3 days of being hunted down and sticking to the shadows with Trevor, avoiding those abominations and remaining undetected. Trevor stirs up and meets Amalia outside the hunter's cabin with heavy eyes as he adjusts to the sudden sunlight greeting his face. Amalia turns to Trevor, pointing out the travel will be 3 days, and Trevor's expression grows grim as he confirms that the travel will take around that amount of time. Trevor looks to Amalia, 3 days, and in these woods that's a lifetime of vulnerability. We must keep to the thicket. If we maintain a steady pace, we might make it before those things have a chance to organize any pursuit. Amalia looks to Trevor with vigor, then we make haste without a moment to waste. We have 3 days to get there, and 3 days worth of food. Amalia sighs. At least we know we won't go hungry while we're being hunted and fighting for our lives. Amalia packed up the meager belongings she had and took the food rations that were within the hunter's cabin efficiently and swiftly, knowing she had little time to spare. When she arrived back outside the cabin, Trevor was waiting, his eyes scanning the treelines with a persistent vigilance. With a final look at the shelter that provided her a crucial night of rest before the heavy travel set ahead of her, Amalia turned her back to it and began to plunge into the dense woods with Trevor. The journey ahead would be daunting, and Amalia knew it. The woods, an ancient labyrinth of ancient, towering trees and thick tanged undergrowth that would only conspire to slow her down. As she and Trevor continued north towards Silverlock, the air remained cool around them with the shadows of the canopy keeping the world beneath in a perpetual muted twilight. regardless the time of day it was. Amalia and Trevor continued with a fast, steady pace. As fast as Trevor's body would allow for him to go, with Amalia rarely letting her hand leave the hilt of her sheathed sword awaiting the inevitable. Hours bled into one another as Amalia and Trevor navigated through the dense forest, the monotony of the trek broken only when the rustle of leaves or the snap of a twig were to catch their attention. By midday, Amalia and Trevor found a small, clear stream and decided to fill their water skins Trevor had grabbed with his belongings when he retrieved his old map back from the stronghold. As Amalia knelt by the edge of the stream, her breath was caught as she saw nearby there were heavy and unnatural boot prints, clearly not human, and they were mirroring her path. As Trevor sees them, he turns pale, losing most of the color in his withered face. He grabbed his map tightly as he realized they were indeed being tracked down. The prints were fresh, maybe within the last 2 hours. If they'd been here before, they may have lost their lives, and that stark understanding made him shudder. Amalia and Trevor, both knowing they have to be careful from this point forward, give each other grim looks. Despite their fast pace, already it was too slow. Amalia lets out a whisper to Trevor, saying, "We need to lose them. We have no clue how many of them there are. From here on out we hide our tracks whenever we can, and we don't walk in a straight line. We need to make it harder for them to find us." However, despite their frantic efforts to confuse their pursuers on the trail, the forest would not let them. The ground was too soft, and their boots left heavy prints following them everywhere they went through the mud. The thicket was too sparse in places, and since they needed to be fast, they could only hide their trail in short bursts. They doubled back to scatter leaves, but as they did so, they heard it. The abominations were closing in on them. Trevor stopped in his tracks with his face going the color of a long burnt cold ash. Looking back, he says, "Amalia, they haven't lost us. They're fast. Too fast." Before Amalia can think of a new plan, 3 figures emerge. Amalia hides in the bushes and signals for Trevor to do the same. But it's too late. The figures have already seen Amalia and Trevor. As the abominations raise their weapons, Amalia pulls Trevor behind her and readies her longsword. As the abominations rush toward her, the first abomination rushes directly towards Amalia, ahead of the other 2. Before it has a chance to swing, Amalia swings with her long sword and shears through the skull of the first abomination, leaving it to collapse limp, motionless, and lifeless on the floor of the woods at her feet. The other 2 abominations pause for a moment before they ready their stance and settle themselves on either side of Amalia. The second abomination takes its strike with a guttural sound and surges towards Amalia with terrifying speed, raising its blade and swinging down harshly. Amalia jumps out of the way just in time, but in doing so gets closer to the third abomination, who slashes wide, as Amalia performs a front roll to avoid the swing. Amalia and the abominations begin circling one another, waiting for somebody to make the next move. Amalia rushes forwards and strikes at the second abomination with a feint attack, known as frooling, and when the abomination goes to parry, she strikes with her true attack, cutting off the abomination's head, leaving only 1 pursuer remaining. However, with her back turned, the abomination seizes the opportunity, letting out a defiant roar. Amalia, sensing the attack, sidesteps out of the way, nearly losing her balance in the process. Amalia lunges forward with her blade whistling through the air, but this abomination dodges unlike the others, ducking beneath her swing that aimed for its neck. Trevor held his breath as the final abomination loomed over Amalia as she regained her balance. As the abomination went for its final strike on Amalia, Trevor rushed from behind and hit it with a flying kick, sending the strike that could have ended Amalia off course and plunging its sword into the ground below. Realizing this may be her only opportunity, Amalia swung her long sword with renewed determination, and in one fell swoop the abomination fell. As Amalia catches her breath, she grabs a sword from one of the fallen abominations and hands it to Trevor. "You fit enough to jog for about an hour to make some distance between us and them?" Trevor wipes a smear of sweat from his forehead, looking at the fallen creatures before turning his head to Amalia. The adrenaline of the fight clearly leaving him drained behind a deep-seated exhaustion from his deteriorating health and confinement, but he nods resiliently. "I have no choice, Amalia. If there are more of them, I would much rather die on my feet trying to make it out than sitting here waiting to die. He tightens the grip on his map, scanning it, and then the woods one last time. Lets us go. Then, an hour of a hard pace before we find a resting spot for the night. With a grunt of effort, Trevor pushes his body to its limits to keep pace with Amalia as they leave the scene of the battle behind them and plunge deeper into the woods. After about an hour, Amalia slows her pace and looks for a spot where her and Trevor can rest. She scours the immediate for a secure hollow, hidden thicket, anything, but with no luck. Every potential hiding spot she can find is either too exposed to the wind or situated in a way that leaves her and Trevor without an escape route. As the night deepens and Trevor's strength deserts him, he stumbles and requires the help of a nearby tree to help him stand upright. With no other options, the two of them are forced to settle for the night in a shallow depression beneath the sprawling roots of an ancient oak tree, leaving them with minimal cover to be shielded only by the sparse undergrowth barely hiding their presence from anybody who is actively searching for them. It is a pitiful excuse for a hideout, and both Trevor and Amalia know it to be true, but it's all they have to work with for the night. As the dark night grows cold, they eventually huddle together to share body warmth, with the silence of the woods feeling even more terrifying than the ambient noises it can create. Sleep to Amalia feels like something distant, with herself only able to envision being caught, the fear of discovery hanging over her like a shroud of death. Amalia looks to Trevor. You have no clue how excited I am to have my own bed again. Before she lets out a sneeze, it's a bit calls tonight too. We should have taken the blanket from the hunter's cabin with us. Trevor huddles closer to Amalia to help keep her warm, even with his teeth shivering uncontrollably as the forest's spring chill seeps into his very bones. A bed. Hell, I would settle for a dry floor and a wall that doesn't let the wind in, he said with a voice devoid of humor. Hindsight is a cruel master, Amalia. We were simply too focused on escape to think of comforts like a blanket. The night stretched before them as a long, shivering gauntlet, much like eating 20 pancakes easy at first, but by the end you're in psychological pain as your willpower fades away. The depression beneath the oak roots offers Amalia just barely enough shelter to break the majority of the wind, and the damp floor of the woods, cold to the touch, seems to draw the warmth from her very being. Amalia and Trevor lie down as still as possible to preserve their heat, listening intently for the telltale signs of the abominations approaching, and for tonight sleep remains a distant and fleeting dream in itself. The cold was an unforgiving sentinel of the night, and despite Amalia's iron-willed resolve to stand watch, her body eventually betrayed her. Her eyelids grew heavy, and the constant shivering lulled to a shadow. When Amalia woke up, the gray muted light of dawn had already begun to permeate the thick forest canopy. She immediately tensed, straining her ears against the quiet of the morning, but heard nothing save for the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant call of the red-breasted robins in the trees above. Trevor remained curled up beside Amalia, still shivering from his own lack of body fat protecting him little from the morning chill, the damp having clung to him through those long, agonizing hours. Amalia stands slowly, her joints aching from the hard ground, and her mind clouded from the lingering weariness from a poor night's sleep. Amalia touches her arms to make sure she's still here. She's alive, but the failure to keep watch leaves a cold, sharp knot of anxiety in her chest. Nevertheless, Amalia reaches down and shakes Trevor gently. Hey, it's morning. We need to get going. Trevor stirs at Amalia's touch, his eyes blinking open to the bright woods eclipsing the sky. The oppressive, suffocating darkness finally lifting to reveal the beauty the woods held within the entire time. Beauty aside, the sense of urgency still remains heavy in the morning air. As Trevor sits up, his joints protesting with stiff audible pops, he rubs the lingering sleep residue from his eyes. Dawn, he breathes with his voice raspy. At least we have the light on our side now. Seeing as we can tell where we're going, it should make tracking us slightly harder for them. Trevor, now standing, brushes the leaves from his rags. We must keep moving, Amalia. Every hour spent stationary is an hour for them to close the distance on us. I fear we've only begun to see what those abominations are capable of. And we still have 2 days until we reach Silverlock. Amalia looks to Trevor. You said they asked you about the region? Did they? Did they harm you for information? Trevor stiffens at the question as memories flood his mind, his gaze eventually falling to his hands, bringing them to trace the deep abrasions around his neck caused by the iron collar still remaining around him as he locks eyes with Amalia, giving her a haunted look. Harm is a simple word. Trevor murmurs, his voice barely louder than the forest. They didn't just use steel. They used something ancient, a hum, like the vibration of a struck bell, resonating deep within my mind. It broke down my thoughts, piece by piece, until I had to tell them what they wanted. They were looking for what they called the intersection. They believe the woods near their stronghold hide a place where the veil between worlds is thin. Whether that is true or not remains to be seen, but if they find it, I fear this entire region. Perhaps even the entire Earth will suffer a fate far worse than my imprisonment. If we wish to avoid that future, then we have no time to sit idly by. We must get to Silverlock, and we must do so with haste. Amalia looks to Trevor, the intersection. Whatever it may be, I'd rather not find out. We need to hurry to Silverlock indeed. With that, Amalia and Trevor set a brisk, unrelenting pace, determination driving them both forward through the tangled woodlands, constantly scanning the surrounding area as the terror of yesterday's encounter leaves them with a feeling they're being watched with every step, being hunted down. Trevor leads the way with his keen navigational instincts, but as the hours pass, the terrain grows increasingly punishing, and by the early afternoon their path is blocked by a steep-sided ravine with small patches of rock that barely raise above the water. As they scan, they see an old, rotted bridge that once spanned, but it is too dilapidated and mostly dangles uselessly above the chasm below. Amalia and Trevor discuss their options, noting that to go around the ravine would cost them at least half a day's travel, which they could not afford if they wished to get out alive. As Amalia walks towards the ravine, she looks down. It's about a 30-foot drop and filled with rushing water that could carry them off should they fall inside. There's no other way across, Trevor says. We either find a way to climb down and make it to those rocks and climb up on the other side, or we lose time we don't have. As Amalia looks back to the old bridge, she sees it still has a few planks standing. Think I could make the jump from the bridge pieces? I'm not exactly an acrobat, but it doesn't look impossible, so long as the rotted wood doesn't collapse. Trevor looks to Amalia with shock. I would not risk it, Amalia. If you fall, it could be the end of you. But Amalia looks to Trevor, then it's a good thing I can't afford to fall. With that, Amalia walked to the collapsing bridge and crouched, inspecting where she would need to jump, how far, and estimating she would need to do so in rapid succession to not risk the wood breaking from beneath her weight. She walks to the last stable support beam, which groans ominously beneath her weight, but with desperate leaps, she begins to hurl herself from one spot to the next across the gaps. After about 30 seconds of absolute precision, Amalia makes it to the firm earth on the opposite side of the ravine's bank, but as she does, the rotting wood collapses and the bridge can no longer be used by Trevor to leap across. The bridge finally giving way leads to it tumbling into the rocky depths below with a thunderous crash. If any of the abominations were nearby, Amalia and Trevor both knew they heard the sound and would be coming this way. As Amalia scrambles to her feet with her heart pounding, she turns back to see Trevor and the panic sets in because he would need to make his way alone and she could only watch. With his current health, it seemed an impossible task. That was madness, Trevor says, eyes wide with shock. Trevor looked helplessly up and down the ravine and to the now fully collapsed bridge. I cannot make that jump, Amalia. You're on the other side, but I'm stranded. Amalia, accessing the situation, tells Trevor he is to go with the original plan, that he must climb down the ravine and use the rocks and ledges to his advantage, promising to safely guide him down. Although Amalia's instructions are clear, Trevor freezes out of fear. The feeling was overwhelming for him, and he was beginning to sweat profusely. As Trevor attempted to navigate the narrow ledge, he froze once his eyes met with the churning water below. Trevor's foot slipped on the loose rock, and as he fell, he cried out. As if by instinct, Trevor managed to grab a protruding root as his foot slipped, but he was now holding on by a sliver of hope as his body dangled above the chasm below. Trevor screamed to Amalia, who watched helplessly from the other side as his grip began to fail him, and she knew the root would not hold him forever. Deciding she wasn't going to lose a friend today, Amalia made her way down the ravine on her side and leaped between the rocks, avoiding falling into the water just inches below. As she made her way to climb up the earthly wall Trevor was desperately clinging to, she was an inch away from grabbing his free hand. But just then the root he was holding onto snapped, and he fell over 30 feet onto the rocks below. Trevor tumbled downwards, vanishing from Amalia's immediate view, and she froze, her breath hitching. Certain Trevor was already dead once she heard the sickening thud, but she heard a groan. When Amalia looked down, she saw Trevor laying just inches from the water, on the hard rock. He was alive, but just barely, and the path back down to him would not be easy with the energy she already expended climbing. Through her panicked breathing, Amalia yells, "Fuck, Trevor. I'll find a way down. Don't worry." As Amalia begins to make her way down, however, she is distracted with her eyes on Trevor, and one failed attempt to grab a stone leads to her losing her footing and placing her foot on loose stone. Before she knew it, she was falling as well, and with a jarring thud, she landed next to Trevor. The only thing keeping her from being in his situation being she was lucky enough to make it halfway down before she had fallen. Amalia landed close to Trevor, with the air knocked entirely out of her lungs. Pain radiated from Amalia's right side and leg, but as far as she could tell, nothing was broken. As she goes to stand, a sudden surge of pain shot through her spine to where the edges of her vision went black, but she fought through the pain. Wincing and limping, Amalia checked on Trevor to see him pale and motionless. His leg was obviously broken, and his breathing barely recognizable by this point. As she listens more intently, she can hear rattling throughout Trevor's chest, meaning he likely has broken ribs as well. As Amalia looks up, her worst fears are revealed as she can hear the abominations clicking in their tongue. Trevor looks to Amalia. "Amalia, leave me. You have to make it to Silverlock," said Trevor, his lips stained with blood and condition grave. "No way. I'll drag you if I have to," said Amalia as she picked Trevor up and hoisted him across her shoulder, his body completely limp. Amalia pushes through the pain via a desperate and stubborn resolve, maneuvering along the narrow spaces where she can go from one rock to the next. Knowing if Trevor fell into the waters, he would not have the strength to save himself, nor would she to save either of them. Eventually, Amalia spots a shallow cave that is just a few feet above the ravine with a path she can walk up. Doing her best to hide from the abominations, she stumbles towards it, straining to keep her footing on the uneven ground, and as she makes her way inside, she sees just above, where they were beforehand, the abominations have arrived. The bridge collapsing likely being what drew them out, as she suspected prior. Amalia held her breath as best she could, until her lungs ached. She pressed Trevor against the cold, damp rock wall of the cave and listened to the sounds of the abominations closing in on them. Before she knew it, she saw the shadow of one pause at the very edge of the cave, its silhouette casting shadows onto the rock walls themselves. Minutes felt like hours to Amalia as she watched, ready to be caught at any moment, her life flashing before her eyes as she prayed they would not enter the cave until the sounds of the pursuit began to drift away. For a short while after the sounds vanish, Amalia doesn't dare move a muscle for the risk of making any noise to draw them in was too great. By the time she finally relaxes enough, she looks to Trevor and sees he is completely unconscious. She goes to listen to his breathing and begins to call forth her divine healing, but as she does, she hears nothing. Amalia freezes in absolute shock and terror as tears begin to flow down her face. "I'm sorry, Trevor. Please forgive me. I'll time them down for you, I promise." Amalia casts one final, heavy glance at Trevor, his form small and still against the cold rock of the fissure, leaving him behind burns in her chest and a hot, agonizing weight. But Amalia knew she needed to reach Silverlock and warn her people of what was coming. As such, she forced herself to overcome her empathy and press forward. As Amalia emerged from the cave, she scrambled up to the top of the ravine with frantic, yet focused movements. She knew the pursuers had moved ahead, and their pace was relentless. As Amalia reached the top of the ravine, she looked north, remembering the people of Silverlock, and fearing what might happen should the abominations reach her home before she can. The thought of everything she holds dear being destroyed being almost too much for her to bear, she begins to run in a full sprint, not even stopping to heal her side or her leg. Her mind focused on her father, her partner, and most of all getting back alive. As Amalia rushes, she sees 3 goblins on her path. They walk in front of where she's headed towards. As she's forced to stop, Amalia raises a hand and says, "While I'd love a fight over loot, I have more pressing matters to attend to," in an attempt to brush them off, but the goblins can see she's clearly injured. Blood staining her clothes, and the bruises on her body, collectively, they respond with jagged laughter. They chitter for a few seconds before closing in with their weapons, obviously without intentions of letting Amalia pass. Amalia, in response, draws her long sword, bracing her feet against the earth as the goblins fan out around her. As the goblins rush in, Amalia performs a shoulder roll, and as she gets up, slices the first goblin open, leaving it bleeding out. The second goblin in rage swings at Amalia, but she sidesteps the attack with a fluid grace. The third goblin does not hesitate and darts forward towards Amalia, slashing at her, forcing her to parry the attack with her longsword, whilst trying to keep her eyes on both attackers. With a powerful swing after pulling away, Amalia's longsword strikes down the second goblin, cleaving through its chest and leaving it lifeless on the floor of the woods. She remains alert and keeps her blade ready, but the third goblin gets in a lucky shot by striking low, while Amalia defended with a mid-range parry. While her leg was not wounded too bad to stand, it definitely made any dexterity she had useless going forward. Knowing this, Amalia swung multiple times, with the goblin parrying the first few strikes, but eventually Amalia's sword found its way through the neck of the goblin, hitting the corroded artery, ending it for good. Knowing she was injured, Amalia found a safe spot to use her divine healing on herself and rested until tomorrow, knowing she would be to Silverlock by nightfall. She was in a secluded, dense thicket of forest, just slightly off the path now. While not the most comfortable shelter, it would need to make do, and Amalia was far too tired to care by this point. The night passed in a fitful blur of images clouding her mind. She saw the dungeon, Trevor's face as the light left his eyes, the abominations, and even the goblins she'd recently faced, wondering if she really had what it took to survive in such a world. When Amalia finally arose from her slumber, she saw the sun raised high in the sky, signaling it was time for her to start moving once more towards her destination. Grabbing her sword and getting through her current gut check time, Amalia finally felt ready to continue onwards. Amalia knew that walking in a straight path would lead her through part of the Vatican Woods, where Kara, known as the Demon of the Vatican Woods, resided. She had the choice to find a different path, but she knew back at the ravine the abominations got ahead of her. As such, he had no choice but to risk being an intruder to these lands. After walking through the fields for what seemed like 3 or 4 hours, she got to the edge of the Vatican Woods, and the forest began to shift. The trees were gnarled, with the branches interlocking like fingers on grasping hands. As Amalia walked through the woods, she could feel a heavy and unnatural stillness hanging over the area, broken only by the occasional sound of something unseen shifting in the undergrowth. Amalia remembered the legends of these woods, of Kara who stalked those who wandered too far from the path, most of whom were rumored to have met an untimely end by her hands. Amalia treaded carefully, as if to be seen as nothing more than a moving shadow through these lands, keeping composure despite every fiber of her being telling her she's already being watched, though she cannot make out if it is just her superstition. The shadows around Amalia suddenly began to seem as though they were stretching and shifting through patterns of being warped by something, though she attributed it to her eyes, simply being tired or not adjusting to the light of the woods as well as she may have hoped they would. But nonetheless, she began listening for any rustling, anything that may seem unnatural. Suddenly the temperature in the air lowered, and a soft, melodic hum began to be heard from directly above Amalia, followed by a voice that seemed to whisper in every direction. "You tread heavily for one so far from home, little paladin. Are you lost, or simply eager to become part of these woods of mine?" said the voice. Amalia was spinning in circles upon hearing the voice, with her sword now in her grasp. The voice was everywhere, but also nowhere at the same time. It didn't make any sense. Amalia began to wonder if the exhaustion she'd gone through was finally catching up to her, but just then she looked up and saw a figure. The figure leapt from the tree branch and landed on the ground without making a sound, facing away from Amalia before turning towards her. It was a tiefling, her skin red, and figure that of a small woman standing maybe 4 feet 10 inches, but with a powerful aura that could shatter the will of seasoned veterans. She does not hold a weapon, yet it feels even without one she could be the largest threat Amalia has ever faced. "Not very observant for a hunter, are you?" the tiefling said as she began to circle Amalia. "Tell me, little paladin, does your clan know you're trespassing on my property?" Amalia looks to the tiefling, knowing in her heart this was Kara. No, they don't. I'm just trying to get back home before the creatures hunting me get to Silverlock." Amalia pauses for a brief moment before lowering her sword, judging by her appearance. "I take it you're Kara?" Kara stops her circling, with her expression changing from that of amusement to curiosity, her tail stilling in the air as she narrows her eyes. "So, the little hunter is running." Kara lets out a light laugh at the thought of a monster hunter being hunted down by a monster. Kara then flips her hair back. "Yes. They call me Kara, but demon is such a pedestrian title. Wouldn't you agree?" Before moving closer to Amalia, as for those creatures hunting you, their scent of corruption is something that even my woods find repulsive. Kara pauses, her expression darkening slightly. They've been restless lately. It makes the shadows, let's say, hungry. Kara then leans in towards Amalia. "And you, running to Silverlock to warn your people? How charmingly desperate." Amalia sighs. "If you want honesty, I am desperate right now. The man I was with died while we were being hunted, and Silverlock are my people. As a member of the Dithel clan, it is my duty to protect them at all costs." Amalia looks to Kara with a sympathetic expression. "And I know how you have to be feeling right now, knowing my ancestors aided with the tiefling genocide all those years ago. I'm sorry that the past happened as it did." Amalia extends a hand. "Just know I am not like my ancestors. I'd like to try and make amends one day. To make peace in the current day and age." Kara took a moment to stare at Amalia's outstretched hand, and for a long moment her expression remained unreadable before she let out a cold, sharp laugh that rang hollow through the trees. Rather than taking Amalia's hand, Kara steps back with her tail now twitching in agitation. "Amends." Kara spits the word as if they were poison. "You offer me empty words and the promise of a future that may never come, all while standing on the very ground soaked with the blood of my kin? How typical. How utterly, pathetically human." Kara turned her back to Amalia. "Your ancestors' debts are not yours to pay, little paladin, but you cannot wash away centuries of history with a simple apology. Perhaps you are far too naive for these woods, or perhaps you know if we were to fight, that you would not stand a chance, so you try to lie to me, to deceive me, to attempt to gain my trust instead? Be grateful I don't do to you what your clan did to those I cherished. Now you'd better hurry before those you cherish are torn apart too." Before she turns to walk away from Amalia, Amalia lets out a disappointed sigh. Okay then," as she lowers her hand, with Kara's dismissal feeling heavier than a punch to the gut. The rest of the trek is grueling. Although Kara decided to essentially let her off with a warning, Amalia could not help but feel as though she was still being watched, as if something had been etched into her very soul itself. Eventually, Amalia reached a clearing and found the main road, letting her know she would soon be back to Silverlock, hopefully before the abominations reached her city. Amalia continued through the pain in her legs and feet from continuous travel until in the distance she saw the gates of Silverlock, with the dread in her stomach tightening as she feared for the worst. Though as she drew near, she could see that the city was untouched. In front of the gates were 2 guards, and at their posts were 2 more armed with crossbows. When she approached the gates, she heard one of the guards yell, "Halt! Identify yourself. You have no business approaching Silverlock in this manner. State your name and purpose, or turn back now." Amalia was confused that the guards didn't recognize her, but soon realized she was so covered in mud, dirt, and grime that from a distance it may be hard to tell who she was. Nonetheless, she complied. "It's me, Amalia Dithel. I need to get my father and a team assembled immediately. There are creatures unlike any we've seen before coming. They're looking to merge worlds or dimensions through what they call the intersection." The guard's stern posture falters upon recognizing Amalia's voice and signals to the other guards to rest at ease. "Amalia? By the gods, child, you look like you've been through hell." Amalia looks to the guard and without a hint of irony states, "Hell would be an accurate description of the last few days." The guard signals for the gate to be opened, and the iron groans as it begins to grind open. As Amalia steps through, the familiar sights and sense of Silverlock relieve her. Her people were safe. At the very least, they were safe now. A group of guardsmen walking by are ordered to by the guard who allowed Amalia entry to Silverlock, stating, "Take her to the commander's war room immediately." Once Amalia has been successfully escorted to Commander Dithel's war room, she sees her father standing over a map table, with his full focus devoted to it. However, when he hears the sound of footsteps, he turns around, and a look of relief paints his face, only to turn to concern as he sees Amalia's current state. Commander Dithel looks to Amalia. "Amalia? What happened? Are you all right?" Amalia sighs. "We have much to discuss, father. None of it any good." As Amalia discusses with her father, she reveals the abomination creature's existence, how she was abducted by them, of Trevor's death at the ravine before finally speaking of Kara, and how she tried to avoid conflict. Amalia spoke of how even Kara acknowledged the creatures have been making their way through the Vatican woods, meaning at this rate, by Amalia's estimations, the abominations would be here soon, potentially within half a day if they're still following her. Commander Dithel looks pale as the tale is recounted, realizing how close he was to potentially losing his daughter. He gripped the edges of the map table to try and relieve whatever stress it could grant, trying to remain composed upon hearing that Silverlock may face a devastating threat. By the end of Amalia's recounting, Commander Dithel decides to raise the alarms and to mobilize every able-bodied hunter to initiate what he calls Defense Protocol Omega, which included fortifying the southern approach to Silverlock and to double the amount of guards at the main gates. He looks to Amalia, placing his hand on her shoulder, finishing by saying, "Amalia, you've done more than enough. Thanks to you, we at the very least have a fighting chance." He then gestures towards the door. "Now rest while you can. I'll need you as close to 100% as you can get. The siege begins soon." Amalia left the commander's war room to navigate the familiar stone corridors of the fortress walls to her chambers, and the clatter of gear and shouts of commands to guards were almost deafening to her. Along the way, she ran into her partner, Callum, who was busy checking the tension on his longbow, his expression tight. Amalia makes her way up to Callum and with urgency explains their current situation, revealing the likelihood of an upcoming attack. Callum, hearing what Amalia's been through, stops working on his longbow and steps toward her, placing his hand on her arm and saying to her, "Go. Sleep, and I'll keep watch. I swear to you, I will wake you the instant the alarm sounds. You will be ready, and we will be safe." Amalia offers Callum a weak, yet grateful smile before she continues the journey to her room. As she reaches her bed, she collapses onto it, and looking at the door to her room, she finally feels secure for the first time since her abduction. As Amalia slept, she had a dream, not through her own eyes, but through the eyes of Kara as a young tiefling, watching as her people were killed by demon hunters, and on some of those committing the genocide it was seen clear as day, the Dithel family's crest. This sight made Amalia's inner soul falter. The smell of the burning woods was intense, something Amalia could never have imagined in her wildest dreams, overpowered only by the metallic scent of blood. She saw through Kara's terrified eyes as the village hidden in the Vatican woods burned to nothing but ash, with screams filling the air. She was inside of a small hollow log, watching as blades were flashing in the chaotic light of not only the sun, but the fire itself. Silence eventually settles, heavy and final, once Amalia, watching through Kara's young eyes, is the only tiefling remaining, finally emerging and trembling. She looks around, seeing the carnage. From behind, she hears a voice say, "Oh, one of you still lives." Your thread must be special, only to turn around and see a creature unlike any she had ever imagined. Its form unshifting and unnatural, before it reached for her, and everything went black. The next thing Amalia knew, she was being woken up by Callum shouting, "Amalia, up!" They've arrived. And without hesitation, Amalia, momentarily forgetting what she just experienced and being brought back to her own reality, gives a determined look to Callum, saying, "Then we've no time to lose. Find high ground and take them out from above. I'll join the melee soldiers." Amalia burst from her quarters, heart pounding, only to come outside and see Silverlock in turmoil. She raced to the main gates and saw the massive iron gates groaning under the assault of the twisted abominations. Guards inside pushing to keep the gates closed shut despite knowing they could not keep them out forever. Panic ran through the streets of the common folk for those who were still outside, watching, knowing what was about to come. Arrows hissed overhead from archers, taking out as many abominations as they could before they breached the gates, as Callum sprinted towards the ramparts, watching the defenders of Silverlock struggling to hold back the tide of the abominations. Within moments, the gate finally gave way and opened, letting the abominations inside. Amalia joined the guards as the abominations rushed in, being forced into the middle of the fray. Swinging her sword with vigor and desperation, she managed to cut deep into an abomination that targeted her, but she didn't take it down, and more were approaching her. Amalia was caught in the shoulder by an abomination's jagged bone-like claw, which forced her to stumble back. The abomination was going for a second attack, but a Silverlock guard came to her side and pushed off the abomination. The Silverlock guard's attack missed, but it forced the abomination assaulting Amalia to create distance, buying Amalia some breathing room. From behind, an abomination snuck up on Amalia and went to deliver a devastating blow, but Amalia could feel the change in air pressure. While she was able to avoid any physical damage, her armor was still cut, and as a result, it was compromised. She knew it was now a weak area she would have to watch and focus on if she did not want to suffer any serious injury or potentially death itself. Around Amalia, the scene was brutal. She was watching as her people fought for their lives and the lives of those they cherish more than life itself. She felt in her very bones every emotion of the people she needed to fight tooth and nail to protect. Amalia, with renewed passion, lunged forward with her long sword to the abomination she'd struck earlier to rid the threat, but the abomination twisted at the last possible second, and it was preparing a counter-strike. The creature lashed out with its jagged bone-like claw once more and tore at Amalia's side, tearing through her armor and slashing through her skin. She felt as her flesh gave way and the blood began to pour out. The pain was intense enough to the point she would do anything to get rid of it, but she knew that wasn't an option yet. If she were to stop fighting and heal herself, she would be open and vulnerable, something she could not risk just yet, so she had no choice besides fighting through the pain. The Silverlock guard who rushed to her aid earlier continued pushing back other abominations from getting to Amalia, but even with his aid, she still had the lingering threat standing in front of her that threatened her life. A second abomination that just finished taking out a different guard turned its eyes to Amalia, swinging its cleaver to her head. As she ducked, she could feel her side scream in pain to where she couldn't help but yell out in agony. Realizing she had no choice but to use all her strength, Amalia rushed to the injured abomination in front of her and with a flurry of strikes eventually broke down its defenses and cleaved the abomination in half with her long sword. As she turned, she locked eyes with the unharmed abomination that tried to cleave her head off earlier, and they began circling each other in a standoff. The Silverlock guard, having pushed off the other abominations, rushed back to Amalia's side and lunged towards her current foe, catching it in the forearm with his heavy blade and forcing it back. The abomination looked to strike back, but was met by an arrow to the back, dropping it to a knee. Amalia looked towards the direction the arrow was shot and saw Callum watching her, giving her a reassuring nod. As Amalia went to finish off the abomination, yet another appeared, this one swinging its weapon towards Amalia and forcing her back, giving the stricken abomination just enough time to regain its composure. The abominations rushed both Amalia and the Silverlock guard, but Amalia was able to sidestep the attack, and with a spin around it, she stabbed it through the back, piercing its heart. It dropped within seconds. Amalia watched as the Silverlock guard and the last abomination they needed to worry about were in a stalemate, their weapons pressed on one another's, both unwilling to give an inch. Amalia, sensing the need to act, sprinted and aimed low for the abomination, cutting through its leg and leaving it laying on the ground. Before she knew it, the Silverlock guard plunged his blade through the abomination's throat. Amalia, finally with a chance to catch her breath, looked around Silverlock, which was now a battlefield. The carnage was insurmountable. As the abominations began to retreat, Amalia could not help but feel defeated as she saw the mangled corpses of the guards she once knew laying strewn about. The remaining soldiers' breathing was exasperated and ragged. Many were injured, but still clinging on to life. Silence slowly met everybody, as they knew they had been victorious. However, the feeling was hollow. Callum descended from the ramparts, his face streaked with sweat and his bow slung over his shoulder. He quickly made his way over to Amalia to assess her state, placing a hand on her shoulder and letting her know everything would be all right, with tears beginning to well in his eyes as he saw her wounded side. Giving her an embraceful hug as he apologized for not doing a better job at protecting her. Amalia's chest was heaving, and the fatigue was finally setting in, but through the pain she returned the embrace to Callum. "It's all right, Callum. We survived. That's what matters right now. Still though, they might come back, so for at least the next month, I want Silverlock on high alert." Amalia feels her shoulder and then looks to her side. "As for me, I need to get some stitches. I used up too much of my energy to heal myself properly right now." Callum nods, his expression serious as he acknowledges both Amalia's orders and her injuries. He relays the instructions to the nearest sergeant before gently guiding Amalia towards the medical facility, stating, "Come, let's get that looked at before you collapse." As he lets her lean on him for support, Callum ushers Amalia to the medical facility, where a skilled medic tends to the wound on her side, as Amalia uses the last of her energy to take care of the lesser wound on her shoulder. The needles sting as they pierce the side of her abdomen, but she gets through them, just as she had the antiseptic. As she's bandaged up, she's given the clear to leave the medical facility, not due to her condition being surprisingly well, but because they require the space for those who have even worse injuries to remain. Amalia makes her way back to her quarters and sinks into her bed despite it only being the middle of the afternoon. The day has left her injured and exhausted, but alive, and her city now safe thanks to those who risked their lives. As her adrenaline fades, she feels the sting of her injuries even more, but eventually finds herself in a deep sleep. As Amalia wakes up and her energy is restored, she takes the time to heal her side with her divine healing, grateful that her clan has been passed down the gift for generations. Shifting from her bed and out to the bustling marketplace, Amalia's eyes linger on well-crafted gear and medicinal supplies that would undoubtedly aid her in the conflicts ahead if she ever finds herself too drained to use her divine healing again. But as she checks her coin purse, she sighs. Amalia had not retrieved her silver or gold when she was in her cell or rescuing Trevor. Her eyes were entirely focused on her long sword and the threat too daunting for her to even think twice. All she had was a meager 10 silver that was left on her nightstand from earlier. Barely enough to survive on, let alone equip herself for war or injury against those abominations. As she looks through the market, she holds up a dense loaf of bread. The man running the stall says, "5 silver for the loaf, lass. It'll keep you going fair a while, Amalia sighed, but purchased the bread. She hadn't eaten since returning to Silverlock after her rations ran out, and right now, any food was worth any amount of coin she had on her. She knew she had to find a way to make money, and fast. Amalia entered the local tavern in Silverlock, known as the Iron Tankard, a hive of boisterous activity and drunken bureaucracy, thick with the scent of roasting meats, pipe smoke, and the most stale of ale ready to knock people on their ass 10 times over. Off-duty hunters and hardened guards were scattered about with the common townsfolk, most of whom were enjoying drinks together and trying their best to forget about the attack they'd just gone through less than 24 hours ago. Amalia, knowing she needed the coin, walked over to the wall by the hearth, where a large splintered board of wood held pinned parchments with job listings. A few caught Amalia's eye. Some were your more basic tasks, such as 20 silver to clear a nest of oversized rodents from the lower storage tunnels, or 50 silver to escort a caravan through the northern pass to Havenreach. But it was one near the very bottom that caught Amalia's eye. Not only did it pay the most for 100 silver, but it solved a few of her lingering issues as well. It was a task to search the Vatican woods nearby for any remaining abominations. Wishing to potentially learn more of her ancestors, as well as keeping the abominations at bay, not to mention the hefty reward, Amalia decided to take the task from the commander's office and venture to the edge of the Vatican woods to scout for abominations. Amalia pulled the parchment down from the board, knowing this in truth was about the Vatican woods themselves, the place where she saw the truth of her lineage and her nightmare that she'd forgotten of until she looked at this parchment in the first place. Amalia walked back to her quarters and prepared to leave, checking her somewhat damaged armor with a sigh, knowing she needed to get something new when she could afford it once more before donning it. The memory of the battle by the gates of Silverlock still fresh in her memory, Amalia mentally prepared herself for if she wasn't strong enough to take down any abominations she crossed paths with and made peace, before stepping out to the main gates, and eventually into the Vatican woods. As Amalia walks towards the edge around a dense tangle of briars, her gaze fixed on a patch of ground where the shadows seemed to pool too quickly, defying the light of the sun shining through the trees. A faint smell of ozone reached her nose, and squatting in a shallow depression were 3 abominations, much less than what attacked the gates, but still a threat without question. She watched them move with jerky fluidity, unnatural even for them, as they began to dig at the earth, likely still in search of the ley lines or the intersection. They're chittering to one another with a sound that made even Amalia's teeth ache with a dissonant and discordant multi-layered noise, much like wolves howling in a circle of fifths to appear as a larger pack. Amalia decides to sneak forward to try and take one out before they notice her to even the odds a bit, but as she crept forward, a loose branch snapped in beneath her boots, sounding like a pistol shot in the quiet of the woods. The abominations froze, their chittering ending abruptly as they whipped their heads around, and their eyes locked onto the sight of the noise. Amalia was already behind a tree by this point, and as one of the abominations went to investigate, they walked by the tree. Amalia was able to take it out from behind, but in doing so, she alerted the other 2 abominations. The second abomination, driven by its own chaotic urge to simply destroy, rushed at Amalia, who jumped backwards to avoid his attack, whilst the third abomination, driven by rage and hatred, stormed at Amalia and forced her to parry, struggling to hold the abomination back. The second abomination, seeing Amalia was an easy target, went for the kill, but Amalia changed the direction of her pivot to push the third in the way, where it was instead impaled. She had bought herself some breathing room as she stared down the second abomination. Rather than continuing the attack as the other abominations had done, this one turned its back to Amalia and walked away as she stood there confused. Up until now, all these things did were try to fight and kill everything in their way. The thought of one giving up on battle seemed alien to her. Nevertheless, Amalia had a decision to make, and inside her she did not have it in her to kill an enemy not posing an immediate threat, so she watched as the abomination walked away from her into the shadows. Amalia spent the next hour moving meticulously along the edges of the Vatican woods, with her eyes darting from shadow to shadow. She eventually went back to her starting point where the first scouts of the abominations were found, but no signs of any surviving abominations were left that she could find. She pushed into a nearby bush, listening intently for any sounds of the chittering she'd heard so clearly prior, and focused on the sense of the Vatican woods, but the woods remained quiet, and the smell vanished. With Amalia met now only by the call of a raven, she decided the immediate threat was likely gone. She sheathed her blade and allowed for the rush of adrenaline to leave her body as she actively worked to calm herself from her current mindset of fight or flight, and began her journey back to Silverlock to report her success to the commander. While she may not have run into Kara for answers today, she knew the future always existed, and perhaps in the grand scheme of things, not finding her was a blessing in and of itself. Amalia returned to the opposing gates of Silverlock, with the sun now dipping lower in the sky, casting long, orange shadows across the reinforced stonework. The guards nod with respect as they push the half-broken gates open for Amalia's passage into the city. Amalia made her way to Commander Dithel's war room and states bluntly, "They are gone, Father." 3 scouts were attempting to open another path near the woods, but I took care of them. The perimeter is secure for now. Commander Dithel exhales with a visible weight lifted from his shoulders, and he immediately gives Amalia her 100 silver before saying, "I wish you hadn't taken that task. I could risk losing anybody but you know?" Before he gives Amalia a reassuring look, "Still though, you're proving yourself as a true asset not only to our clan, but to the people here in Silverlock. I give you my thanks, not as your father, but as your commander as well, Amalia." Amalia, wasting little time, looked to her father. "I am grateful for your thanks, Father, but at the same time, I've something I must ask yourself. What can you tell me about Kara? I've been having visions ever since I met her. Visions of our clan massacring hers, and not in self-defense or for any heroism.